If you have, you will notice three things about those Canadian geese. Number one, they always fly in a V formation. Number two, if you will notice them, one leg of the V is always longer than the other leg of the V. And number three, if you follow them carefully enough and long enough, you'll notice there's a considerable amount of confusion in the flock. Now, just as a matter of curiosity, how many of you have ever wondered why one leg of the V is always longer than the other one? Can I see your hands, please? Well, let me explain that the longer leg is longer because it has more geese in it. You know, I don't know why, but that silly thing just really grabs me. I can't wait. I can't wait to get to that particular one, okay? Now, the reason there's confusion in the flock is that periodically they change the leadership of the flock of geese. Now, the reason they fly in a V formation is because in wind tunnel tests, they've discovered that the flock of geese can fly 63% further than the individual goose could fly. What they do, the lead goose, in fighting the headwind, creates a partial vacuum off either wing, and those other geese are flying in a partial vacuum. He grows tired very easily or more quickly than the others, and so they replace leadership real often to give the leader a rest. But by working together, they can fly 63% further. In reaching your objectives, yes, indeed, you really do need to work with other people. If you're going to reach your goals, ladies and gentlemen, you got to get in shape. Now, I want to emphasize something here which I believe is enormously important. In order to reach all of our goals, we need to get in shape spiritually, because that is a very definite factor in our life. We have spiritual goals, but we need spiritual help a lot of times to reach all of the other goals. It requires study. It requires prayer. It requires involvement there. We need to get in shape physically, ladies and gentlemen, because I don't care what your objective is. I can share this with you without any reservation. When I got in shape physically, I was able to do a lot more things with my career because the energy level increased rather dramatically. I have far more energy now than I had when I was 25 years old. They tell me, the psychologists do, for example, that when I make a 1-hour presentation, that I burn more raw energy than a laboring man does in a 10-hour day. So when I do 6 and 8 hours a day, or even 3 or 4 hours in a day, or even 1 hour in a day, I have burned some energy. As you can tell, I speak at about 280 words a minute with gust up to about 550. I mean, you know, I burn some energy. I move it on out. Now, you also need to understand that if you're going to reach your goals, you got to become attentive to the details in your life. A lot of little things that many people overlook, and you need to become aware on a daily basis of what you're doing towards those goals. Now, I'm not trying to get you to be as detail-oriented as the executive vice president of our company. I mean, he proofreads the Xerox copies. I don't think, you know, that's what we're talking about. But it is the little things that make the big difference. You call a girl a kitten, for example, and she'll love you. Call her a cat. You see, you got a problem there. You can say she's a vision, you score all kind of points. Call her a saint, you're in bad trouble. It's one thing to tell a young lady that she looks like the first day of spring. It's another thing to tell her she looks like the last day of a long, hard winter. I mean, there is a difference. It's the little things. Fellas, if you look at your wife and say, you know, honey, when I look into your eyes, the wheels of time just stand still. That's beautiful, that's poetry, that's motivating, that's exciting. But can you imagine what would happen if you were to look at her and say, you know, honey, you got a face that'd stop a clock. I mean, it's the little things. If this watch of mine were 4 hours wrong, I wouldn't have any trouble with it. I can tell you instantly if my watch is 4 hours wrong. But if it's 4 minutes wrong, I'm in trouble. For example, tomorrow morning I catch a flight at 8:20. Now, if my watch is 4 minutes wrong and I get there at 8:24, see what the problem is? I made a deal with the airlines that You know, if I was not there when they got ready to go, that they were just to go ahead without me. And I found out last year that they live up to their end of the agreement. I found out also it's easier to catch those dudes before they leave the ground. All of that to say it's the little things that make a big difference. If you want to reach your goals, ladies and gentlemen, not only must you be detail-oriented, looking after the little things, but you also must literally be able to see the reaching. When I had my physical examination at the Cooper Clinic, preparatory to losing the weight and getting on the exercise program, one of the things I did over there, and this is kind of ugly, but I had not read Ann Landers at the time, and I'll use it as my excuse, although I really knew better. You know, Ann says you're not supposed to steal pages out of other folks' magazines. There was a magazine at Dr. Cooper's office. It was an old magazine now. And there was a picture in it advertising jockey shorts. Now, I don't know if you folks read the jockey short ads or not, but if you don't read the jockey short ads, the next time you see one, you ought at least look at a picture. You'll find out in a hurry, they don't put jockey shorts on fat boys. I mean, they just don't. At least they don't have a good year. Now, I took that picture of that fella in those jockey shorts and I hung it up in my bathroom and I said, now there's my hero. That's the way I'm going to be. That's the way I am going to look. Well, the next morning at 5:30, the opportunity clock sounded off. Negative people call them alarm clocks. You know, the opportunity, I mean, if you can hear it, that gives you an opportunity to get up and go. You know what I mean? The opportunity clock sounded off. I rolled out of bed, put on my fancy running outfit I just got, and hit the front door and ran a block, literally. Did better the next day, I ran a block and a mailbox. Did better than that the next day, I ran a block and 2 mailboxes. I'll never forget what happened. And finally one day I ran a half a mile, then 2 miles, then 3, then 4, then 5. But every time I went in the bathroom, ladies and gentlemen, I saw the picture of that guy in the jockey shorts. That became my goal right there. I visualized myself as looking just like that guy right there. I'm going to look like this man in the jockey shorts. The truth of the matter is we really do need to have a clearly defined target. We need to be able to literally see ourselves as reaching that objective. For many, many years before I ever succeeded, quote, on the platform as a speaker, it was my dream to do exactly that. I cannot begin to tell you the tens of thousands of speeches I made in my mind in order to reach that particular goal. I visualized every speech imaginable. And the beautiful thing about imagination, you see, is you can visualize any kind of speech and any kind of response you want. In these speeches which I made in my mind, and boy, do I ever wish we could have recorded just one of them. You talking about speeches. You've heard about speakers having folks rolling in the aisles. I had them rolling up and down the steps. You heard, about standing ovation. My average standing ovation was 11 minutes in my dreams. I mean, listen, I never made a mistake in the speech I had in my mind. The audience sat there with incredible rapture and attention. I mean, as if they could not believe that a mere mortal could utter such incredible words of wisdom. I mean, the beautiful thing about the imagination is, you see, you can make it absolutely just right. You gotta have your dreams. But let me tell you something, folks. Be careful about your dreams. Be very careful. Because you see, when you dream those dreams, when you write them down, when you put a date on it, when you list the obstacles which you have to overcome in order to get there, when you identify the people, the groups, and the organizations you need to work with in order to get there, when you spell out what you've got to know in order to reach your objectives, when you devise that plan of action, that game plan to get there, and when you write it down, what's in it for me, when you do all of those things, ladies and gentlemen, and follow some of these other steps that we're talking about and are still talking about, you're going to be reaching some of those objectives. I can honestly look you in the eye and say that virtually every major objective I've ever set in my life has been reached. And I honestly believe that the rest of them will be reached. When you follow the steps with firm conviction, when you've made your commitment, when you do all the things we're talking about, things are going to happen in your life. If you'll notice, I've not even hinted throughout this entire presentation that it is easy, because it is not. As a matter of fact, I'm absolutely convinced that life is tough. But the point is, you got to be tough on yourself. And when you're tough on yourself, then life is going to be infinitely easier on you. I can tell you it's fun. I can tell you it's exciting. I can tell you it's rewarding. And I can tell you that when you follow all of the steps we're talking about, that all the goals we've been talking about, the physical, the mental, the spiritual, the social, the career goals, the financial goals, they all come to pass. You see, the interesting thing is, as we look at our goals, there's no such thing as an individual goal. When I set the goal, for example, of writing that book, only about 1 in 2600 pages a day, little did I realize that it would have such a bearing on my social goals. You'll be amazed at the people that invite me to a free dinner now since I wrote a book. I mean, it affected my social life. But you know what? It also affected my family life because I had to do a lot of research to put it together. It improved our relationship. It improved my spiritual life because, again, I had to do some research there. It definitely improved my physical life because I tied it in. Had a dramatic impact on my career. Had an impact in every phase of my life. Your goals are going to do the same thing. There's no such thing as an isolated goal. They're all tied in to so many of your other goals.